everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema, and now that Far From Home has released, we're going to stop and re-watch and rank every Spider-Man movie from the worst to the best. But before I begin, make sure to comment down below, let me know your thoughts, what's the worst, what's the best, and everything in between. And also don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because pretty soon I'll be ranking all of the MCU movies from the worst to the best. Starting off with last place, number 8, we got Spider-Man 3. And while this movie did have some good moments, it was very cringy at some points. When Spider-Man becomes Venom, they totally twist Venom's character of who he's supposed to be, and some of the character and plots seemed a little messed up as they try and throw in a bit too many villains, and just the way that everything flows is a little choppy, which makes this at last place. Moving on to number 7, we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and although I don't think this is a particularly horrible film, there are some things within the plot that move too slow, and the chemistry between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn in this one doesn't work too well for me, and like some of it just makes him seem like he's coming off as a little bit of a jerk. And also with Electro's character, the way he forms into being having a huge ego seems too extreme, with the way he's come off with nobody really caring for him. And though there's the emotional moment at the end with Gwen Stacy's death, it altogether, all the chemistry that Peter Parker has with all the other characters doesn't work as well as it does in some of the other films. Moving on to number 6, we have Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. And although they do a good job with all of the parts with Peter Parker and the relationship with Mary, and then also bring in an excellent villain with Doc Ock, I just don't particularly care or buy into the idea of Spider-Man being able to lose his powers just because he's having psychological issues, which seems to just not work out. But otherwise, some of the themes of the story are really good. Some of the action and fight sequences are done really well, and I really still enjoy this film, though it's of course not the best. Number 5, we have Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, and although I love this story, the soundtrack is really good. I just really gotta say, some of the first 40 minutes of the development of the story just goes a little bit too slow for me, and the way they replay the story of all of the Spider-Man going into the Spider-Verse, it just gets a little bit too redundant for me. But otherwise, from that, the story goes really well. I really enjoy what they bring to the table. Moving on to number 4, we have The Amazing Spider-Man, and they do a really good job at retelling this origin of Spider-Man. And I feel like the differences and twists they added on Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was different enough that it made an enjoyable film. And with the parent story added into the mix, though it wasn't something I was really trying to ask for, they made it moderately interesting to where I thought it was nice. And the way they changed his girlfriend to Gwen Stacy and all of the story still flows fairly well and really good with a great villain. I still think this is a pretty good film. Before I move on to my final 3 rankings of the Spider-Man film, make sure to comment down below, and I'd love to hear what you think. How would you rank them? Moving on to number 3, we have Sam Raimi's first film, The Spider-Man. And this film is just very fun and nostalgic and holds up even to this day as it released in 2002. All of the elements are just really well done. The story is interesting, the villain is good, and the way they portray Spider-Man and Peter Parker just works really well. And the way Green Goblin is used makes for a really good villain that makes for the interesting story and the relationship between him and Spider-Man. And though nothing in this film is over the top, the messages it contains and the story it tells makes for this to be a great movie. And at number 2, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. And although my number 2 pick and number 3 pick are really equal to each other. I just had to pick this as number 2, just so it edges just a little bit over Sam Raimi's Spider-Man because of the way that they portray Tom Holland as Peter Parker and how he is more realistic of a high schooler. And the way all the characters interact just makes it feel like you're watching a high school environment take place. And not only that, but the Vulture as the villain just is really excellent, as we don't get a character that is just trying to go out and destroy the world, destroy different things and take over the world. He's a villain because he's just wanting to earn money to take care of his family. And so from the great cast of Michael Keaton as the Vulture and Tom Holland as Spider-Man and just all those other lovable characters integrated into an excellent story, this just goes into my number 2 spot. And at number 1, we got the most recent film, Spider-Man Far From Home. This was a pleasant surprise being able to watch this film. It was a Spider-Man film done right, done well, because it was so big with all of the things that it brought out. And being an MCU film, it brought out a lot of the humor that we're used to, but it also brought out some older references to some of the past movies that were just brought a lot of nostalgia out of me and brought a lot of emotion as they played scene by scene, and every scene was almost perfect. The way all the story played out, it was interesting. There was a lot of twists, and really it was so good that the only thing that I can really complain about is the first 10 to 20 minutes of the film. It just really went slow. You couldn't really tell the sense of direction it went, and that's where most of the jokes didn't really hit its mark well. But other than that, it made for an excellent movie and with a great story and great twist. And that's why I put it at my number 1 spot. So that was just my take on all of the Spider-Man films and how I ranked them. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. What was the worst, what was the best, and everything in between. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We all have different opinions, so be respectful of what others think, what's the worst, because we're all gonna just have different thoughts on what's the best. But also don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because my MCU ranking will be coming very soon, and I'll be back for more movie reviews, rankings, and more.